Welcome to Mormon Book Reviews, where an evangelical encounters the restoration. I'm your host, Stephen Peinecker, and I'm very excited to have a very special guest on, Gene Judson, who probably a lot of you know because he posts a lot of stuff on Facebook. He's just this dude who's really cool, and he's found me and my channel last fall, and it's kind of been a fan and promoter of the channel. And well, I got the chance to finally meet him for the first time at Mormon History Association, and then just had another recent interaction with him at Sunstone. And so we're going to talk a little bit about Gene's experiences going to his first Mormon History Association and also volunteering at Sunstone, and some really cool stuff that I think we got to give a shout out to Lindsay Hansen Park, because she's really awesome. And so I want to talk about that. So Gene, it was really cool. Well, first of all, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Steve. It's been fun to be friends with you for almost a year now on Facebook, and to see you in person at the Mormon History Association, and then to have our little side conversations here and there.
Yeah, and we were talking off camera. By the way, I got the chance to meet his wonderful wife. Is it okay if I say her name? Michelle? Yeah. And we had a nice chat with her, and you told me about your background, and it's quite an interesting story in history, so I was really cool to meet her. But you had mentioned that part of the reason you friend requested me was I got to be friends with this guy because
you are somebody who could get interviews that John Dehlin couldn't get. You could get authors and Mormon historians that for some reason or other decided not to go on Mormon stories, and I could get updated, fresh access to their information and their latest books on your channel.
Cool. Well, that's really cool. And that is one of the unique things about this channel, is that the interesting mix of people I'm able to, and it's been a real blessing to be able to talk to all these interesting people, because I got this whole bookshelf here, man, full of these authors who I thought never in a million years would I be having them on my program. Dan Vogel, Richard Bushman, never. Sandra Tanner. And here they are. And it's just so cool. By the way, folks, while I'm thinking about it, don't forget to enter the contest giveaway for the book by my good friend Ronald Huggins of Gerald and Sandra's. I'm going to leave a link in the description. So if you want to enter, just mormonbookreviews@gmail.com. Make sure you put in the subject heading book contest. I think I'm going to have my deadline for that August 31st. And hopefully I'll have Sandra on soon. So
I bought that book at Sunstone.
Oh, you got a copy of the book at Sunstone? Okay, yeah. That was the cool thing, is the whole goal of that was signature, because I was involved in the background. Like, they were really, really trying to make a major effort to get this thing out before Sunstone, and they didn't know if they were going to make it or not. And so just by the skin of their teeth, they were able to get that thing out there. So that was really cool. And they sent me
able to get their signatures on it.
Yeah, so I got two copies. The one is the one that Signature sent me, and then the other's ones with the signatures. So I'm just going to send out the one that don't have the signatures, But I figured I got an extra. Whenever I get an extra book like that, the Jonathan Neville, you help me with the drawing. So let's start there. So we finally get to meet at Mormon History Association, and first of all, you got to do the camera work for the book drawing for the Jonathan Neville books. What did it feel like to kind of be part of the channel?
It was exciting. I was able to be up close and personal with what was going on. I remember hearing about the drawing, and I remember chatting with you and saying, well, I'm not going to help unless I can get one of the books. And I was just kidding. Make sure you draw my name. But anyhow, yeah, so it was really exciting to be part of Mormon History Association. I had heard a little bit about it, and if I can say one thing about it is, a year before, I had started to become interested in Mormon history a little bit more, and I saw a book, and this is it.
Oh, yeah.
Writing Mormon History by Joseph Geisner.
Yep.
And since I'm a Facebook investigator, so to speak, I collect people. I caught a hold of Joe, and I asked him about his book, and I said, tell me a little about your book, because I'm thinking of buying it. So he told me a little bit about it, and he said, Gene, well, I'm going to do, and I asked him how much he got paid for being the editor of a book like this. And he said, well, they gave me a hardbound copy and a softbound copy. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you my softbound copy as long as you promise to read it. And so I said, I will. And a few days later, I got it in the mail, and it took about a month to go through it all. But it's really interesting. It has stories of about 15 Mormon authors, what got them into it. Some people were scholars, and they just talk about what got them into writing the book that they wanted to talk about. Some people were housewives, and they were driving in northern Illinois and got lost into Wisconsin and saw a street called Mormon Way. And so what is Mormon Way doing in a side street in Wisconsin?
Well, you can ask John Hijack that. He'll tell you. He lived on that street.
Yeah. And so then I think that was I think it was either Beverly Speak or something like that. And she ended up writing a book about the Strangites that moved after Joseph Smith's death to Wisconsin. And so she wanted to know more, and she found stuff, but she found stuff that was all scattered. And she thought somebody needs to write a book about all this scattered stuff, just put in one book. So that's one way. And so it was really exciting to, read all these stories,
Yeah, it's very stressful. It's a good book. Joe sent me a copy, or had the publisher send me a copy, and I've been in touch with him, and eventually I'm going to get him on. I used to read a ton of books, but one little problem is once you start a YouTube channel about books, you don't have time to read them or listen to other podcasts because it's kind of become a full-time job. But I've read a couple chapters of some of the authors I've had in my program. I think Daniel Stone, and it's a good book. I highly recommend it, and I'll leave a link in the description for that book. So this is cool, Gene. So you've been doing this deep dive in Mormon history just as a kind of a personal thing. And again, it's interesting because I did a deep dive in Mormonism since I've been in high school. Never intended on doing a show. It just kind of happened on its own. And I've done all the research. I've done the 10,000 hours already. When are you going to start your channel?
I don't know. Soon.
So tell me just overall.
So I talked to Joe about it, and I said, it'll be nice to meet you. I'm thinking about going to the Mormon History Association.
Okay,
and he said, oh, you know what? This year I can't make it. And he said, maybe you could be my eyes and ears, And so I decided to go to the Mormon History Association. So I drove all the way across Nevada. And while I was in Nevada, I called up Joe and I said, hey, tell me what to expect. How do you want me to be your eyes and ears? What do you want me to go see, and who do you want me to say hi to? So we chatted about that. And then we found out we had some commonalities, like he was attending BYU the same time my future wife was attending BYU. And we talked about restaurants in the area and different lifestyle experiences and living in Provo and things like that for a little while. So that was kind of fun. And so then I got to go to my first Mormon History Association meeting. And as a new member, there's something called the New Members Breakfast. And I got to sit at Richard and Claudia Bushman's table. Of course, I forced my way in, kicked somebody off. No, I didn't. But that was so fun. So that was my first, geeking out, on Mormon famous people. Let's get a picture of Richard and Claudia having breakfast.
That is great. Yeah. And they're such wonderful people, and they're so accessible. And that's the one thing, folks, Mormon History Association, just full of really nice people, very interesting people. And if you're really into Mormonism, man, that's the place to go. And that was great. I'm just so happy for you that on some level, you kind of experienced some of what I've experienced, that you've been able to talk to the authors.
The year before was yours first one, right?
This was my second MHA.
Yeah. And so I got to tell him that I listened to the audio book of Rough Stone Rolling while I played solitaire. No, I didn't tell him that. But I said, and I stayed awake for nearly the entire book. And he said, I heard that. So yeah, he was a nice guy.
Yeah, really nice. Very, very cool folk. And so anything else you want to talk about with Mormon History Association before we transition to Sunstone?
Yeah, so the Mormon History Association events were I'd say a little bit more scholarly than Sunstone. You know, I learned a lot. The theme was kind of on learning more about indigenous people in America and the Mormon interactions. Learned a little bit more about, I think it's Darren Smith, no.
Darren Perry.
Darren Perry talked about what the indigenous people learn about the Mormon interactions, and it's not a pretty sight. Or they were mistreated often.
That was a
And
rough
so-
presentation to go through. It's really hard to hear those stories, but they need to be told.
Yeah, and so I got to do other things. I met, presenters. I got some of the authors from this book to sign, Todd
that's cool.
Compton and some others. And it was up in Logan at Utah State, and so got to tour around the pretty area up there.
Yeah.
John DeLynn lived up there for a little while, and I can understand why you'd want to raise your family there. It's just got a great setting. And so anyway, my first experience there, I got a lot of pictures, met a lot of people, made about 15 or 20 Facebook friends.
That's great.
Got to be part of your book giveaway.
Yep.
And it was awesome.
It was fun. And I'm so glad you got to participate. And then it was really cool because, I wasn't sure if you were going to be at Sunstone. I don't think so. When I saw you, I was like, oh yeah, of course Gene's going to be there. It was really cool that you came to that. And it turns out that you actually at the last minute became a volunteer for Sunstone. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so like the weekend before Sunstone, I'd already decided to go, but they posted something on the Facebook page that they needed another volunteer. So I talked to Grace Poole, and she's the right-hand person for Lindsay Hansen Park. And she got me hooked up, and she said, we'll show up at 5 o'clock on Wednesday evening at the convention center. And so I thought, okay. And so interesting thing with that is they had an app this year where you log into the app and it shows you all the different things. You can connect with people.
Mm-hmm.
And so Wednesday morning, somebody wanted to go to tour Salt Lake, Temple Square. And I thought, well, I haven't been there in 30 years or something like that. So I might as well go and see the changes and see what's happening. So I talked to her and I say, and it's right next to the convention center, right? Temple Square. Because I'm thinking that it's going to be at the Salt Palace area, convention center. And she says, well, no, Sunstone's at the convention center in Sandy. So I was like, boy, it's a good thing I hooked up with you, because otherwise at 5 o'clock, I would have been in downtown Salt Lake instead of in Sandy. So we tour the Beehive House. We talked to a couple sets of missionaries on Temple Ground, Temple Square. And we saw somebody practicing the tabernacle organ for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a cool experience. So then I go to my assignment, meet Grace, meet Lindsay. My wife paints little 3-inch square originals, watercolors. And I handed one to Lindsay and took my picture with her. And she thanked me a lot for it. She thought, it's so cool. And I was able to give another one to Natasha Helfer, and I think another person, but I can't remember. I think I gave one to Grace as well.
That's cool. Yeah, Natasha's really cool. I got to hang out with her one of the evenings, and it was really, really awesome person. Good person to get to know.
Yeah, so I got to hand out people who were coming in to register, or that already had registered, pre-registered. So I got to hand them their name tags, and I rifled through to see all the famous people's names and stuff like that. And got to say hi to some people that were coming for the first time. And some people were my Facebook friends already. So I got to say, hi to those people in person for the first time. And then Brigham Young shows up.
Yep.
And the person who played Brigham Young for the Under the Banner of Heaven show was there for the opening night kickoff presentation in Lindsay Hansen Park. Interviewed him, and we heard all kinds of cool stories about his preparation, how the actors and actresses got together and discussed things that were happening in Mormonism and stuff like that. So it was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's when I missed that evening because I was at an invite only dinner with Sandra Tanner's group where I got to speak with.
I wasn't invited.
Yeah. Well, it was a very exclusive club. Here I
Maybe
am
next year.
I'm at this table and there's Sandra Tanner at the other table. And then I'm sitting right next to Radio Free Mormon, John DeLynn, and we all spoke. And it was really wild because I'm thinking I never imagined a year ago that I'd be one of those people who would be asked to speak. And Lynn Wilder spoke. I mean, who's who? And Allison and Jen did a fantastic
job. You had to
organizing.
follow RFM.
Yeah, I came right after him. Yep. I'm like, oh man, that's a hard act to follow, you know, which of course
Did they record that?
What's that?
Did they record that?
Actually, they did. It's a matter of fact, Allison sent me a link to watch it, and I completely forgot about it. I got to watch it.
We should do the link to that too.
Well, I don't think that they want it to be public, so I'll have to find out about that. But I think it was the idea was that this was kind of a closed meeting, intimate affair, not really like a big open public thing. So that I think that was the intent. So that evening I got to do that, and of course, then Thursday is when I encountered you for the first full day of Sunstone, and really got a great reception from people. And I want to talk about that too. Another great group of people. It's very diverse. So you got a lot of polygamists there, faithful Mormons, ex-Mormons, atheists, transgender.
Community of Christ.
Community of Christ. Oh, of course. They're Community of Christ, of course, big, you know, look what we got, you know, and they're showing the photograph and, oh yeah,
there's more than one way to Mormon.
That's right. And Community Christ is another aspect of that. So they were the cool kids table, right? We're Community of Christ, and look what we just found, a picture of Joseph, right? So that was really cool. And but it was just it's just a great event. You know, I wasn't quite sure what to expect. You know, it's kind of a mixture. Like you have RFM doing a magic show, and then Thomas Murphy's reading a paper that he presented down the hallway. You know, of course, I was torn which one to go to, but I promised RFM I'd go to his magic show. But
I went to the magic show because I didn't think that would sound very good on audio.
That's right. Good point. And so that was fun to just and RFM, you could just tell he loves that stuff. He loves being on stage and being a showman, and he's a real character. I got to spend a lot of time with him, and he's just a fun dude.
I kind of pestered him a little bit, and I told him later that my level of pestering didn't even approach the love and respect I have for his show and what he does.
Oh, and it's cool to be able to say that to him. And so let's just talk a little bit now about Lindsay Hansen Park, because I think that she's just a wonderful person. And I'm part of the reason I'm doing this special episode was I just thought I want to honor Lindsay for the work that she's done with the Year of Polygamy podcast, the fantastic job organizing Sunstone. And there were a lot of glitches that happened. You know, like the actress who played Emma Smith ended up being sick, and then they had an issue with the film projector at the movie night, and she just kept, just like, you know, she was able to just keep her, just be absolutely on top of everything, wasn't rattled by any things. She just was able to
total class act.
Total class. And I just thought, maybe why don't you just share a little bit of your thoughts about Lindsay Hansen Park?
So yeah, she welcomed me as a volunteer, made me feel, at home. And I would see her buzzing around the hallways at during the conference, trying to put out fires and meet and greet people and show maybe some of the speakers exactly where their presentation should be, ask if they need any help. And she did. She had to coordinate lots of helpers. There were lots of presenters and lots of who are the people that introduced the presentations, the moderators and stuff like that. And so they just do a wonderful job with all the different things that are going on all at once. And Lindsay is right in the thick of all that. And I mentioned, Grace Poole helping with all those things. And there was another person, a Never Mormon, was at the front desk almost every single second of the day. And let me see if I can give a shout out to her.
As you're looking for that name, I'll just talk about just how the staff were very friendly. And I thought that they did a really good job staying on top of things. And it was all basically a lot of volunteers. And of course, I was a volunteer. So I was able to get comped because I was the umpire at the softball game between the Exmos and the polygamists. Now, Leah Merritt, who's a evangelical Christian, she participated in the kickball tournament on the Exmo side. So, and by the way, I want to give a shout out to Leah because, of course, she's been on my program. She's like one of the few evangelical students at Brigham Young University, but she drove me around. She saved me so much in Uber. I bought her dinner out of appreciation for everything. And she is just really an awesome person. And just like us, kind of like just loves the geek out over Mormonism. So I want to give out a shout to Leah. Okay, who did you need to give a shout out to?
Cassandra Brumley. So she's never been Mormon. She sat at the front desk handing out name tags, taking people's money, telling people, where presentations were going to be, and handing out information, selling shirts. And it was pretty awesome. So she went to Sunstone. She didn't go to any of the presentations, but she just volunteered all that time.
And is she kind of a geek when it comes to Mormonism too, being in Evermo, or?
Not really. She's her family relocated from Boston. I think she grew up in like Montana or Wyoming or something like that. And she just became friends with Grace, I think. And she had time, and Grace said, okay, I'm going to take advantage of you. If you're going to offer your services, I'll find a place for you. And so that was pretty awesome to see somebody who was, not even really interested in Mormonism, but she was loving, helping people out. She was just a nice person, Unfortunately, sometimes we Mormons are taught, like if you're not a Mormon, where will you go? What will you do? How will you teach your children to become good people? How will you have any morals? And there are billions of people that have great morals that aren't Mormons, aren't religious, aren't Christians. They're, different faiths, different levels of beliefs. And humans are basically good. There's a few bad apples.
And now that sounds very Mormon there. Well, speaking of which, I do want to say, this is the note, and because getting back to Lindsay, she wrote you this, and I think this is really cool. And Gene's given me permission to read this. And this is from Lindsay Hansen Park to you, Gene Judson. I just wanted to reach out and let you know that I felt like you were an absolutely critical, magical part of Sunstone this year. Having you there was pretty transformative, and we felt your energy and hard work all week. You are a gift of light and love, and it shows. Thanks again for showing up for us all and giving so much to us. We are lucky to know you. Thank you as well for the beautiful artwork, which we talked about your wife made. Get some rest, and I hope to see you again on another rotation around the sun. I like that term. Thank you so much for the beautiful art again. Well, that's really cool, Gene. What did it feel like to get something like that from her?
That just shows what a class act Lindsay is all around. What a loving person, caring, considerate. And I wasn't expecting anything like that. I was expecting, hey, thanks for volunteering. Luckily you got to save $200 on your Sunstone.
Yeah.
But here she writes that, and I responded back to her, and I said, if I was 1/10 the person that you are, I would consider myself lucky. So.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Well, I wanted to ask you, was there anything else about Sunstone you wanted to talk about?
Just that I learned that it was like anybody's Mormon story, any kind of story there was. I think it was something, the theme was many mansions, and there were a few lectures on, different ways heaven is perceived, mother in heaven, throughout history, different things, that were religious. And then some people just had their stories to share. And it was amazing. And there were very emotional, raw presentations that were just like riveting. I got my caricature drawn by Christina Freeman, and she had just this amazing story I'll never forget her presentation was number 161. And, it just was amazing, raw. Here's my story. She has multiple personalities. And if you talk to her for about a paragraph's worth of conversation, all 5 personalities would come out. Even when she was drawing my caricature, she would talk in the different voices for the different characters. And, somebody asked her in the presentation, did you have to negotiate with all your alters, to do this presentation? And other people said, who wanted to be the artist? And pretty much, I guess all of them went to the art school at BYU and got the training. And so I went around and I showed RFM my picture. And so he went and got his caricature done. I showed Sandra Tanner.
She did.
And Rick Bennett was with her at the time. And Rick said, I'll pay for your caricature. And he bought like 2 or 3 other people's caricatures. It was kind of fun. But yeah, just all the amazing stories and all the wonderful people that were there. One other last thing is, I think on day 2 or I don't know, Friday maybe, I was getting lunch at Carl's Jr. or something like that. And over off in the corner, there were 5 or 6 people chatting, and I could hear somebody say, when I was a Mormon, or, the thing that got me out of the church. And so I finished my hamburger and I walked over and I go, am I hearing some anti-Mormon conversations going on here? And I was still wearing my name tag, and they say, oh, we see your purple strap and name tag. We know where you've been. So they were Community of Christ members. And I said to them, if you have more than 100 ex-Mormon friends, we are probably friends already. And so one of the ladies there looked up and she said, yep, we've been friends for 6 months. And so I got to see her again and take my picture with her at the Community of Christ table. And it made me more interested in the Community of Christ. I saw Lachlan McKay there and got my picture taken with him. Mm-hmm. He's an apostle. Not very many people have their picture taken with an apostle. Mm-hmm. And I know he's been on your show lately with the Joseph Smith, yep. Daguerreotype. Mm-hmm. And so it's just awesome. And that made me want to go on Sunday to his presentation at the Community of Christ. And
I saw you there. Yep.
Yeah. So I got to meet more people, take more pictures, and it was just a wonderful experience there.
And then I didn't realize it. I totally slipped my mind. I didn't realize after that you went to go meet Rebecca Biblioteca and the Good Book Club, had a dinner. I was like, oh, shoot, I should have gotten out there. So I reached out to Rebecca and talked to her on the phone the other day and said, hey, I'm so sorry. I said I would have come if I made the connection. But then I started having symptoms of COVID the next day. So maybe it was better that I didn't show up anyhow.
That is good. So we met at the Brew and Chew in Provo for an afternoon. And it was, 90 something degrees, and we ate on the patio with not very much covering. So we all melted, but enjoyed each other's company. And I had maybe one of the best breakfast burritos there I've ever had. So it's good, not too bad. Shout out to them. And it was wonderful seeing the Good Book Club members and be able to talk and see each other in person and, get to know a little bit more about each other. And then, the very last thing that happened on Saturday was the kickball that you got to. And so I was hanging around, and at first at the front desk, and Grace comes up to me and says, hey, can you take some stuff over to the kickball? Everybody's there, but they don't have their hats and shirts. So I got to, my last thing was to take the hats and shirts to the my last volunteer thing, to the kickball game, and then the wonderful little dinner and I guess trivia game that they had afterwards. That was fun too.
Yeah, it was a blast. It was fun. And I wanted to say, first of all, I want to give a shout out real quick to Daniel Bryant Chance, who wrote a book. It's a Western novel, and it's about trains and Brigham Young and Danites. And I haven't read the book, but my neighbor who lives 2 houses down from me, he's got the copy and he loves Western novels. So I asked him to read it, and I actually told him, so why don't we have a special episode where you and I both interview Daniel. I just wanted to say that I got, because he had asked me to take the book and he could sign it, and I said, listen, I'm very light on my carry-on, and I want to make sure I'm going to be getting books, so I can't take your book. So last week I got in the mail a sticker saying, okay, place this on such and such page, in which, by the way, the page is written in Deseret alphabet, and I got to ask him the translation of that. And so I went over to my neighbor and said, all right, I'm going to put this in here because he asked me to do that. I'm going to post a photograph of that today on my Facebook page to acknowledge that and also acknowledge this interview. There are so many people that I met that I couldn't list them all, that came up to me, got pictures with me, and it was just really cool to kind of connect with the viewers, the fans, literally fans. It's weird having fans. But I just want to say it was a great experience. I want to give a shout out to Mormon History Association. You're awesome. I want to give a shout out to Sunstone and Lindsay Hansen Park and Grace Poole, who I got to meet, wonderful person. I want to thank all the volunteers for all the work that they did. I want to thank Eugene for all the work that you did to help. I got a cap, so I'm glad I got one of the caps, and that was because of you. I want to appreciate and honor you in addition to Lindsay and the rest of the crew. Thank you for everything that you're doing, Gene. You're such a cool dude, and it's really cool having you on the program. And I just want to finish up with maybe just tell a little bit about your backstory. Talk a little bit about your journey over the course of the last 7 years or so.
Yeah, I mentioned that I hadn't read too much Mormon history. A lot of the books that I read maybe were, like the autobiography of Parley P. Pratt, which I gave to you at Mormon History Association, and that's a faithful promotion, faith promoting stories of his experiences. And then I got from a friend this book, William Henry Bigler. He was there, and it's my friend's great grandfather, and William Henry Bigler's diary proved the exact date of the discovery of gold at Sutter's Mill. And so they just knew it happened at a certain time in the summer
time frame, but they didn't have an exact date.
And because he recorded it in his journal, the Bancroft History Association could isolate that specific day that gold was discovered. And in this book, it was pretty amazing. It was the first things I ever read about, that he had a mission to go collect tithing from the Mormon gold miners. Our family had a cabin in the Sierras, and we would see, Mormon Hill or Mormon, flats, every now and then. It was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And we wondered why, that history was there. But there were, and then he also got sent on a mission to actually, it wasn't quite a mission, but some of the leaders of the church staked him to go mine for them and bring back some gold for them. And that was interesting to find out. And it was my first experience with like a real Mormon history, because he also went on the Mormon Battalion. That's how he got to California. And that was a march from, I think, winter quarters throughout the Southwest. And they ended up in either Los Angeles or San Diego. And it talked about his experiences with that. And then, going work for Sutter and, did the gold discovery and his different things he got to do. And so he, as an elderly person, got to go present to like the Bancroft History Association his time as a, worker on the Sutter's Mill and the discovery of gold. They paid for his train out there, to go to make the presentation. And so he experienced something, 150 years almost before, I got to go to the Mormon History Association. So that was kind of an exciting tie-in. And so my story is basically that I grew up with 4 brothers. My mom tried to help us, get ready for church all the time. My dad was what's known as a Jack Mormon, baptized, only went so high in the priesthood that he couldn't assume any leadership roles, but he could he smoked and he drank, but he went on the wagon long enough to baptize me in 1967. And so, that was an interesting experience, but then he fell off the wagon and went back to his sinful ways. And he worked on the waterfront in Oakland and San Francisco. And so there's, rough customers working there, stevedores, stuff like that. And so anyway, my mom tried. She tried her best. And so I grew up with this kind of dual. My dad would joke about, Mormons don't know how to park in the parking lot. And sometimes he would substitute moron for Mormon and stuff like that. And so I grew up with this kind of a sort of a loose, California Mormon, we would drink Coke even though, or, Coca-Cola products as it was okay, but we would hear at the same time at church, other people saying that they wouldn't drink it because of the caffeine. And so root beer was common. It's the way my mom would say it because she grew up in Utah. And that was our go-to drink, our soda. And then, I didn't go on a mission because I thought you had to be perfect, but I figured a way to answer the temple recommend questions and, live a good enough life for a little while in order to get married in the temple to my wife. I had various callings, in scouts and young men's and Sunday school teacher. And I was in the Sunday school presidency for a little while. And my highest calling, as they would say, would be executive secretary for the bishop. And so I get to go to the bishopric meetings and you start to learn, how the sausage is made. And it's not as miraculous as you think. Everybody thinks, the callings are from God and bishops have, this spirit of discernment and ability to do God's will in their congregation. And you just learn that it's a bunch of good people trying their best. And they start every meeting with a prayer. And so anyway, then I read a chapter in this book.
Okay.
On
Lengthen Your Stride by Spencer Kimball. Okay.
Yeah, on blacks in the priesthood and I didn't have this book back then, but Brigham Young Studies posted the full chapter. And what's interesting is they have a DVD that has lots of source material and background information on the different chapters. And I learned that the issue with blacks in the priesthood was more an evolution of thought. And that by the time Spencer Kimball decided that the blacks should have the priesthood, I read between the lines that Spencer was basically saying to God, I'm old, I'm going to give the blacks a priesthood. I'm going to go and pray in the temple every day for 2 weeks. And if I'm still alive at the end of that, I'm going to assume that that's what your will is. And he was brave, to do that. And it took, meetings and conversations with the Quorum of the 12 in order to, make that go forward in the way that they wanted. And it was a very business-like and corporate-like way that they executed the announcement. And there was some backstory about how there were pressures, external pressures. And as a Mormon, we're taught that it just was God's time, for the change. But when you can see all the pressures and the lawsuits that were on the horizon, and maybe a potential, the Carter administration was looking into taking the tax exempt status away. And so there's all these things that you don't hear about. You only hear about God is directing the church. And so that made me kind of wonder about things. And I thought, wow, God always loved the blacks. He always loved them. And it was just prejudice that they didn't have the priesthood. And that was around 2010. And it was the first time I gave myself permission to think that the leaders had been in error on something. And then I thought to myself, well, God always loved women. Women should have the priesthood. And then I looked up that Community of Christ, women held the priesthood since the mid 80s. And there were women apostles. And that was just so eye-opening that, how liberal and how, loving that was. So I joined a little bit on the movement that the women had, ordained women.
Mm-hmm.
And I did everything but post my profile on their page. I read more of their materials, and I started getting into John DeLynne's Mormon Stories. And he actually, at the time, was helping people to stay in the church.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually, in 2013 and 14, stayed going, even though I had my disagreements with the leaders. And then Kate Kelly got excommunicated, John DeLynne got excommunicated. And I told my wife, I just can't go to a church that would excommunicate people for having their opinions and saying them, instead of engaging them in thought and using their own resources to, discuss things openly. And so my wife faithfully attended for the next 5 years. And then COVID happened and gave me time for a deeper dive into Mormon history. And I got a chance to talk to Joe, got to read from John DeLynne, had the LDS
Newell Bringhurst
essays. And I read these, and at first it was like, what are the gospel topics essays? How did I miss those, right? And it turns out that they were kind of released in secret. Like the church wanted to be able to say, yeah, we know some problems in history and we know some problems with our theology. And we will put that there. And the instructions to the bishops were just like, if somebody's having questions, send them to the gospel topics essays. And there's a faithful presentation of all the problems. And maybe that'll help keep somebody in. And so then I heard the Hans Mattson story, where he actually, there was a Swedish rescue, and that might have led to the release of the gospel topics essays, because Hans Mattson found all these problems with church history. And so there was that. And then I got this book,
Mormon History.
And I heard, one thing I heard is Kathleen Melanakis present to John DeLynne that, there you go.
Yep, early evidence of
counterfeiting.
Yep. I just
And
talked
my
with her the other day.
my personal feeling is that she has these dots that she's connecting that are way, way far away from each other. So I don't get the connections necessarily, but the dots are amazing. The information that you get from it, that, Joseph Smith's brother Hiram attended a high school college prep that's right near one of the Ivy League type schools. And on their campus, they had a school of the prophets. Well, as a Mormon growing up, we think that God told Joseph Smith to do a school of the prophets. And that was the only place that existed on earth, because the knowledge from God came. And so anyway, so I started thinking these amazing things. And I told my wife, I'm so lonely with this information I had, because once I told her I believe women should get the priesthood, she didn't really want to talk about anti-Mormon stuff anymore. So we hadn't really talked about anti-Mormon stuff, except for every now and then I would throw out a question or something like that. And I said, I am so lonely with this new information I have. I just want you to know where I'm at. You can go to church, you can pay tithing, you can do your calling as Relief Society secretary, you can keep all that going, I don't care. But for my mental health, I need you to know what I know. And in 1 week, she stopped believing in the church's truth claims. But she was still duty bound, and she stayed Relief Society secretary till the end of the year. She kept doing the Relief Society newsletter for the whole next year, just because they couldn't find somebody to replace her. That's how awesome she is. And so, but yeah, so she finally joined me with not going to church. And, it was an amazing transformation, because we had been struggling in our marriage here and there, and different issues would come up, and things weren't, all that great all the time. But having her on the same page in faith was finally, a way that we can connect and bond even stronger. So now we go on walks and listen to Mormon stories, or Mormon Book Reviews or RFM, depending on what the hottest topic is. And we go for walks in the neighborhoods. So we don't know if the neighbors all know what we're listening to, but it's just kind of fun to share in this experience.
You know, Gene, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the program and telling your story. And I really had the opportunity to also meet and talk with Michelle. And you just, I want to thank you for opening up off camera. You guys really told me a lot of stuff, which was really, touching to hear. And, I just want to thank you for being a fan, being a promoter of the channel. I really do appreciate you, Gene. And I want to thank you for coming on to share your thoughts on Sunstone, Mormon History Association, and tell a little bit about your story, which is really cool. Thanks for sharing that with us today.
Thanks for having me. I've been wanting to do something like this. I bought like 6 months ago a vlogging kit, with the ring light.
Oh yeah.
Didn't buy a speaker or anything yet because I figured, I could just use my laptop.
Uh-huh.
But it's kind of a difficult leap to take, to put yourself out there and to be public. But, going to Mormon History Association, going to Sunstone, seeing a bunch of really nice regular people that are doing awesome things. And it's just given me some courage to be more open and honest about things. I tell people I don't post anti-Mormon things. I just post science, history, philosophy, and current events and let the discussion flow.
Well, I just want to remind folks too that tomorrow night's episode, Friday, I'm going to be doing a special launch of Nathan Smith's new YouTube channel. We interview a couple Mormon transhumanists. We do part 1 on my channel and then part 2 on Nathan's channel. And Gene, when you decide to do something, if you ever do decide to launch something, whether it's a podcast or YouTube or vlog or whatever, you just let me know and I'll have you back on to kind of give it some fanfare and we'll go from there. So Gene, thank you so much for coming on.
Cross promotion is the way to go.
Oh, I've been doing that since the beginning, dude. Even when I had just 100 subscribers, like, oh, I want to help him. He's got 50, and that's just the kind of person I am. And that's just, I like to help promote people. And this is not, as you all know, it's not an anti-Mormon channel. One of the very first people I promoted was Robert of Book of Mormon Editions. And he comes on about every 6 months. We do Book of Mormon Geek Outs and we have a good time. And he's a very faithful Mormon. And this channel, somebody criticized me the other day because they said, oh, all these anti-stuff. And I did a quick count. I'm like, by far, the group that I have on my channel are faithful LDS folk. That's the single largest group. I also have Christians, I have atheists, I have ex-Mormons, you name them, other branches of the Restoration. But the largest branch is more than represented than just about any other group. And so this is not an anti-Mormon channel. I don't think, Gene, you consider yourself anti-Mormon. You're just at a journey that you're at.
I'm in a journey searching for truth.
And that's where we should all be, right? We should all be on that journey. So,
and since this is Mormon Book Reviews, tell me, here's some books I've read.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had Spencer
Joseph
on?
Smith for President, Spencer McBride. I haven't yet. I don't even have a copy of that. I don't think I have a copy of that yet.
This was pretty good. I ran Dan Vogel.
Dan Vogel's Book of Abraham Apologetics. Yep, I got that. That's a good one. I haven't finished that, but I've read parts of it. It's good stuff.
Ben Park.
Yeah, Benjamin Park, Kingdom of Nauvoo. That was my, for the longest time, I had a photograph of that book as my thumbnail for my channel. Oh yeah, The Glass Looker, the graphic novel by Mark Elwood, who's been on. That's a great book.
Right. So I'm looking that over, sharing it with my wife.
The Next Mormons by Jana Reese. Yeah, that's an interesting book.
These last few books, I'm kind of all reading one chapter a day on just about.
Recovering Agency by Luna Lindsay, Lifting the Veil of Mormon Mind Control. Oh, who publishes that? I'm not familiar with that one.
I think this is self-published.
Oh, okay, self-published, yeah.
And then I've been reading this. Very interesting.
H. Roberts. Who wrote that one? Are those writings of his?
Yeah, so he did his own autobiography in the early 1930s.
Oh.
And it's pretty amazing. He has some pretty amazing life experience stories early on. Later on, it gets to be one big promotion of himself about what a great politician he was.
Oh, yeah.
And he kind of was against the women vote. And so I kind of, he's less of my hero, but I do appreciate that he always was trying to put history out. I remember reading, I think it's called the documentary History of the Church that he did. And I got hold of that maybe 30 years ago and read a little bit. So I've always held him as high esteem for his historians work. And so anyway, and then when I went to Mormon History Association, the piece de resistance or whatever it's called was meeting Sandra Tanner and getting the big red book.
Mormonism Unveiled. Well, no, not Mormonism Shadow or Reality. That's right. And and that was the red book that was read in Under the Banner of Heaven TV series. And it was signed by Sandra.
For Tanner to sign it to both of us, because I gave Sandra a picture from Michelle as well.
Oh yeah, that's great. That's awesome. So you get to get
Michelle,
to these people.
Michelle makes me look good.
Yeah, she's your calling card. She literally gives you something that has a calling card. So that's so cool. Boy, we went a little longer than I expected, but that's fine. I like our interviews to be very organic and everything. And thank you for sharing all these books that you've been reading that have been kind of informing you. This is Mormon Book Reviews. So whenever somebody wants to put a book in front of the camera, by golly, you're going to be able to do that, because that's what the books are still the center. All the people are the center of the show, but Mormon Book Reviews is in the title, and we always have to honor the important role that books play in this journey as well. So anyway, folks, I'm so glad, Gene, that you came on. And let's do something again down the road. I just want to remind my audience to don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for when a new episode comes out, and leave a link in the description for those of you who'd like to buy merch at our store at mormonbookreviews.com. Also, don't forget to enter the contest for the book giveaway, deadline August 31st. Make sure you put in the subject line book contest at mormonbookreviews@gmail.com. Send me your name and your address. Don't forget, we're also on all the major podcast formats. We're still a little behind, but we're going to get caught up in the next week or two with that. And I think that's about it. So just a reminder, folks, all the voices of the restoration will be heard on Mormon Book Reviews. Have a great day.